Princess Zarathil stood before her mother's throne, her crystalline scales shimmering with indignation. The great hall of the Velthari Empire stretched endlessly above them, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with the rhythm of 1,000 heartbeats. Yet all Zara could focus on was the words that had just shattered her world. "A human?" she repeated, her voice echoing through the chamber like breaking glass. "Mother, you cannot be serious. The council has agreed to this barbarism." Empress Velandra regarded her daughter with eyes that held the wisdom of 7 centuries. Her massive form, easily twice the height of any human, remained perfectly still upon the living throne that had grown from the planet's core. The ancient seat pulsed with energy, responding to its occupants' emotions with subtle shifts in color. "Lower your voice, child," the Empress commanded, though not unkindly. "The decision has been made. The Galactic Alliance requires this union to cement the peace treaties. The humans have proven themselves surprisingly capable." Zara's claws dug into her palms. Throughout her 3 decades of life, she had been prepared for an eventual political marriage. It was the burden of royalty, the price of power. She had imagined herself wed to a Zephyrian prince with his magnificent wings, or perhaps a noble Ctheran with their vast intellectual prowess. But a human? They are primitives, mother. They have barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Their lifespans are a fraction of ours. They're small, weak, and... She struggled to find words adequate to express her disgust. "They are completely incompatible with our ways." The Empress rose from her throne, and the chamber itself seemed to respond to her movement. The walls brightened, and a low harmonic resonance filled the air. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of a species that had ruled the stars for millennia. "Do you know why the humans won the border wars, Zarathil?" The question caught the princess off guard. The border wars have been a series of conflicts that erupted when humanity first expanded beyond their home system. The established galactic powers had initially dismissed them as insignificant newcomers. That dismissal had cost them dearly. "They had superior numbers," Zara replied uncertainly. "No, the Krovar hegemony outnumbered them 3-1. The humans won because they did something no other species in galactic history had ever done." The Empress moved closer to her daughter, and Zara could see the mix of admiration and concern in her mother's ancient eyes. They fought as if they had nothing to lose, but everything to gain. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, they rammed them into enemy vessels. When their soldiers were surrounded, they kept fighting until the very end. They turned every defeat into a costly victory for their enemies. Zara shook her head. "That is madness, not strength." "Is it?" When Admiral Chen's flagship was crippled above Kepler for 42B, do you know what he did? He ordered his crew to abandon ship, then piloted the vessel alone into the enemy command carrier. That single act of sacrifice crippled the Krovar fleet and saved an entire human colony. The admiral knew he would die, yet he did it without hesitation. The princess felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard fragments of such stories, but had always assumed them to be exaggerations or propaganda. The way her mother spoke with such certainty, and was that respect in her voice? "The galactic community has learned to fear human desperation, daughter, but it is not their capacity for destruction that makes them valuable allies." The Empress returned to her throne, and the chamber dimmed slightly. "It is their capacity for loyalty. When humans bond with something, whether it be their families, their beliefs, or their adopted homes, they will defend it with their lives. This is why the Alliance wants them as partners, not enemies." Zara paced across the polished floor, her mind racing. Everything she had been taught about the natural order of things was being challenged. The Velthari were ancient, sophisticated, powerful. Humans were newcomers who had clawed their way into galactic society through sheer stubbornness and violence. "But why me?" she asked finally. "Why must I be the sacrifice for this alliance?" Her mother's expression softened slightly. "Because you are my heir, and marriages between heirs create the strongest bonds. The human they have chosen is also significant, the son of their president and a decorated war hero in his own right. Captain Marcus Webb." The name meant nothing to Zara, but she filed it away for later research. "What do you know of him?" "Enough. He commanded a frigate during the siege of New Geneva, where he held off a Zephyrian attack fleet for 6 hours while civilian transports evacuated. He lost his ship and most of his crew, but saved over 50,000 lives. He was 24 years old. Zara stopped pacing. The Siege of New Geneva had been a legendary battle, one that marked the turning point of human-Zephyrian relations. She had studied it in her military tactics courses, though the focus had been on Zephyrian strategic failures rather than human heroics. He is a soldier, she said slowly. He is, but also a scholar. He holds advanced degrees in xenobiology and interspecies relations. He speaks 17 languages, including passable Velthari. The Empress paused. He specifically requested that he be allowed to learn our customs before the wedding. This surprised Zara more than anything else. Most species barely bothered to learn basic Velthari phrases, relying instead on universal translators. The idea that her intended husband was actually studying her language and culture was unexpected. I still do not understand why you agreed to this, Mother. We are the dominant power in this sector. The humans need us more than we need them. The Empress was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy with the weight of prophecy. The Devourers are coming, Zarathil. The words hit the princess like a physical blow. The Devourers were legend, a mythical force of destruction that supposedly consumed entire star systems. They were the subject of children's nightmares and ancient warnings, not serious political discussion. The Void Swimmers have been sending increasingly desperate messages through the quantum fold. Entire sectors have gone silent along the galactic rim. Whatever is coming, it is beyond our previous understanding of warfare. The Empress stood again, and this time the chamber's walls dimmed to near darkness. The humans have something that we and the other elder races have lost over our long centuries of civilization. What? The ability to adapt quickly to impossible situations. When faced with extinction, they do not despair or retreat into philosophical acceptance. They innovate, they improvise, and they survive. The Empress moved to a great window that looked out over the capital city's glittering spires. If the old warnings are true, we will need that human stubbornness in the dark times ahead. Zara joined her mother at the window, looking out at the millions of Velthari citizens going about their daily lives, unaware that their princess was about to be wed to an alien creature they barely understood. "How long do I have?" she asked quietly. "The ceremony is scheduled for the next solar convergence. 6 months, by your human's calendar." The Empress placed a gentle claw on her daughter's shoulder. "Use that time wisely. Learn about him, about his people. You may find that this marriage is not the curse you believe it to be." As Zara watched the lights of her homeworld twinkle below, she wondered if her mother was right. Could these strange, violent, short-lived creatures truly be the key to surviving whatever darkness was approaching? Or was she simply being sacrificed to political necessity, her personal happiness deemed irrelevant in the face of galactic politics? One thing was certain: her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The question was whether that change would lead to salvation or disaster for them all. 3 weeks after her conversation with the Empress, Princess Zarathil found herself in the palace's forbidden archives, surrounded by data crystals containing classified information about humanity. What she discovered there challenged everything she thought she knew about the small bipedal species. The first revelation came from battlefield recordings of the Centauri campaign. Zara watched in fascination as human soldiers, outnumbered 10-1 by Krell warriors, refused to retreat even when their energy weapons overheated. Instead, they adapted instantly, using the environment as weapons, turning debris into projectiles and coordinating attacks with a precision that seemed almost telepathic. But it was the medical reports that truly captured her attention. Human soldiers would continue fighting with injuries that would have immediately incapacitated most other species. They had documented cases of humans functioning with broken bones, severe blood loss, and damaged organs. Not through biological superiority, but through sheer determination. Fascinating, are they not? Zara spun around to find her grandmother, Elder Matriarch Silandra, standing in the archive entrance. Despite being over 9 centuries old, the ancient Velthari moved with surprising grace as she approached the princess's research station. "Grandmother, I did not hear you approach." Zara quickly tried to close the file she had been viewing, but the elder matriarch raised a clawed hand. Leave them open, child. I was the one who authorized your access to these records. Silandra settled her massive form onto a reading cushion that automatically adjusted to accommodate her size. I suspected you would want to understand your future husband's species before judging them too harshly. Zara gestured at the data crystals around them. The reports seem exaggerated. No species can be this recklessly brave and simultaneously this calculating. You sound like I did when I first encountered humans 50 years ago during the Proxima incident. The elder matriarch's eyes took on a distant quality. A human exploration vessel had crashed on an uninhabited world in the Proxima system. The planet was experiencing violent seismic activity, and every other species would have written off the crew as casualties. Instead, the human government sent a rescue mission. Zara accessed the file as her grandmother spoke, scanning through the mission reports with growing amazement. The rescue ship's captain was a woman named Sarah Chun, Admiral Chen's predecessor. When conventional extraction proved impossible due to the unstable surface, do you know what she did? Silandra's voice carried a note of admiration that surprised the princess. She ordered her ship to land directly in the disaster zone, knowing it meant certain destruction of her vessel. They saved all 47 crew members from the crashed ship, but lost their own means of escape. That is suicide, not heroism, Zara protested. Perhaps, but then Captain Chun did something that changed how I view human nature forever. Instead of accepting death, she organized both crews to build a new ship from the wreckage of both vessels. For 6 months, while the planet literally cracked apart around them, 94 humans worked 18-hour days, combining technologies that were never meant to work together. Zara found the technical specifications in the files. The hybrid vessel they had constructed was an impossible fusion of exploration class and rescue class systems, held together by what human engineers cheerfully called creative problem solving. They succeeded? She asked, though the answer was obviously yes. Not only did they succeed, but the ship they built became the prototype for the Horizon-class vessels that revolutionized deep space exploration. Captain Chun took an impossible situation and turned it into an innovation that benefited the entire galaxy. Silandra moved to examine another data crystal. This is what humans do, Zara Thil. They take problems that would paralyze other species and somehow find solutions that no one else would have even considered. The princess spent the rest of the day reading mission reports, technical analyses, and psychological profiles. Each file painted a picture of humanity that was simultaneously disturbing and inspiring. They were violent when threatened, but also capable of remarkable compassion. They were technologically inferior to most galactic species, yet somehow consistently achieved superior results through ingenuity and determination. That evening, she decided to research her intended husband specifically. Captain Marcus Webb's service record was extensive for someone only 28 years old. The Siege of New Geneva was indeed his most famous engagement, but it was far from his only noteworthy action. At 19, he had been part of a diplomatic mission to the Thrak Confederacy that had gone disastrously wrong. When negotiations broke down and the Thrak attempted to execute the entire human delegation, young Marcus Webb had somehow convinced the executioners to spare the other diplomats by offering to take their place. The gesture had so impressed the Thrak honor guard that they had intervened, overthrowing their own commanders and establishing a new government more favorable to human interests. At 21, Webb had commanded a scientific expedition to study an unstable star system. When solar flares threatened to destroy their research station, he had piloted a solo mission directly into the star's corona to deploy emergency shielding. The data collected during that mission had advanced stellar engineering by decades. During the border wars, his tactical innovations had been credited with saving entire colonies. But it was the smaller details that intrigued Zara most. Webb had personally written condolence letters to the families of every crew member lost under his command. He had funded educational programs for war orphans using his own prize money from successful missions. After each battle, he would spend days in the medical bays, visiting wounded soldiers regardless of their species or allegiance. He visits enemy wounded as well, Zara murmured to herself as she read through the medical reports. The archive AI responded helpfully. Captain Webb has been documented providing medical assistance to injured Krell, Zephyrian, and thrax soldiers on 17 separate occasions. He has stated that pain does not recognize citizenship and considers medical aid a moral imperative that transcends political boundaries. That gave Zara pause. The Velthari had always prided themselves on their ethical sophistication, yet they rarely extended medical courtesy to their enemies. The idea that humans, supposedly primitive and violent, would care for wounded foes was both admirable and incomprehensible. She accessed Webb's academic records next. His thesis on interspecies communication through cultural exchange had been revolutionary, proposing that lasting peace could only be achieved through genuine understanding rather than mere political agreements. He had spent 2 years living among different alien cultures, learning their languages, customs, and belief systems. Most impressive of all was his linguistic work. Not only did he speak 17 languages, but he had also authored translation algorithms that bridged conceptual gaps between species with fundamentally different thought processes. His work had made meaningful dialogue possible between civilizations that had previously been unable to even understand each other's basic concepts. As Zara delved deeper into Webb's personal files, she discovered something that surprised her even more than his military or academic achievements. He had specifically requested assignment to this marriage alliance. While other human nobles had been suggested by the diplomatic corps, Webb had volunteered himself, stating that he believed the union between their species was crucial for galactic stability. He had spent the last 6 months since the engagement announcement studying Velthari culture intensively. His progress reports showed remarkable dedication. He had already mastered complex grammatical structures that typically took other species years to learn. More importantly, he seemed to genuinely respect Velthari customs and philosophy, rather than simply memorizing fact for diplomatic purposes. Late that night, Zara found herself reviewing video records of Webb's public speeches. Unlike most human leaders who spoke with aggressive passion, Webb was thoughtful and measured in his words. He talked about the future of galactic civilization with the same careful consideration that Velthari philosophers applied to cosmic questions. In one particularly striking speech given after the border wars, Webb had said, "We must learn to see our former enemies not as defeated foes, but as potential partners in building something greater than any of US could achieve alone. The universe is vast and full of challenges that no single species can face in isolation. Our strength lies not in our ability to conquer, but in our willingness to unite." The words reminded Zara of her mother's warnings about the approaching darkness. Perhaps the human captain understood something about the future that she was only beginning to grasp. As she prepared to leave the archives, one final file caught her attention. It was a personal message from Webb himself, recorded just days after the engagement announcement and intended for her specifically. With trembling claws, she activated the playback. The hologram of Marcus Webb appeared before her, the first time she had actually seen his face. He was smaller than she had expected, as all humans were, but there was something in his eyes that spoke of depths beyond his physical stature. When he smiled, it seemed genuine rather than diplomatic. "Princess Zarathil," he began, and his pronunciation of her name was nearly perfect, with only the slightest hint of human accent. "I know this situation cannot be easy for you. I want you to know that I approach this union with the utmost respect for you, your people, and your traditions. I do not expect instant affection or even friendship. I hope only for the opportunity to prove myself worthy of your trust." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I have studied your species' history and philosophy extensively, and I am continually amazed by the wisdom and beauty of Velthari civilization. I hope that our marriage might serve not just as a political alliance, but as a bridge between our peoples that allows each to learn from the other. I look forward to meeting you and to beginning what I hope will be a partnership that honors both of our heritages." The message ended, leaving Zara staring at empty air. She had expected arrogance or condescension, the typical attitude of younger species toward their elders. Instead, she had found humility, respect, and what seemed to be genuine enthusiasm for their union. For the first time since her mother had announced the engagement, Princess Zarathil found herself curious about her future husband rather than simply dreading him. The day Captain Marcus Webb arrived on Veltharian Prime, the capital city experienced its first major incident of what the human media would later call diplomatic chaos. Zara watched from her palace balcony as Webb's transport ship attempted to land according to human protocols, which apparently involved a much steeper descent angle than Velthari flight control had anticipated. The ship touched down safely, but not before setting off every emergency alert in the spaceport. Within minutes, news feeds across the planet were showing footage of the human vessel's near-crash landing, complete with panic commentary from Velthari reporters who clearly had no understanding of human aerospace engineering. "Perhaps this marriage is doomed before it begins," muttered Zura's personal advisor, Keflon, as they watched the news coverage. "The humans cannot even land a ship properly." Zara surprised herself by defending her intended husband. "The landing was successful, Keflon. Human engineering simply operates on different principles than ours." She had spent weeks studying human technology and was beginning to appreciate their more direct approach to problem-solving. When Webb finally arrived at the palace 3 hours later, he was accompanied by a small diplomatic entourage and what appeared to be a massive collection of luggage. Zara observed the arrival ceremony from a hidden alcove above the main receiving hall, following Velthari tradition that betrothed couples should not meet until the formal introduction ceremony. Her first impression was that Webb looked even smaller in person than he had in the holographic message, though he carried himself with a confidence that made his physical stature less noticeable. He wore what she recognized as human formal diplomatic attire, a dark blue uniform decorated with insignia indicating his military rank and civilian honors. What struck her most was his behavior during the reception. While his human companions seemed slightly overwhelmed by the massive scale of Velthari architecture and the formal complexity of the welcome ceremony, Webb appeared completely at ease. He greeted each Velthari official in their own language, with proper intonation and respectful body posture. When Elder Matriarch Silandra presented him with the traditional crystal of welcome, Webb accepted it with both hands and spoke the ritual response flawlessly. The ancient words, difficult even for young Velthari to pronounce correctly, flowed from his lips as if he had been speaking them his entire life. "Impressive," Keflon admitted grudgingly, though linguistic ability means little if he lacks the wisdom to apply it properly. The formal introduction ceremony was scheduled for the following evening, but Webb's first day on Veltharian Prime provided Zara with ample opportunity to observe him discreetly. She was particularly curious about how he would interact with Velthari citizens outside the formal diplomatic environment. Her chance came when she learned that Webb had requested a tour of the city's historical district. Using her authority as princess, Zara arranged to follow the tour route from a distance, curious to see how her intended husband would react to the cultural heart of Velthari civilization. What she witnessed challenged her preconceptions yet again. At the Memorial of the Ancient Wars, Webb spent nearly an hour reading every inscription, asking detailed questions about the conflicts and their cultural significance. When his Velthari guide explained the philosophy behind one particular memorial dedicated to enemies who had fought with honor, Webb nodded thoughtfully and shared a story about human memorial practices that honored fallen opponents. At the Great Library, Webb requested access to philosophical texts rather than technical manuals. Zara watched from the upper galleries as he studied ancient Velthari writings on ethics and governance, making careful notes and occasionally asking for clarification on concepts that had no human equivalent. But it was at the Children's Education Center that Webb truly surprised her. The visit had not been part of the official tour, but Webb had noticed the building and asked to see it. The center was where young Velthari learned about galactic cultures and developed the foundational knowledge they would need to interact with other species. When Webb entered the main learning hall, 24 young Velthari children clustered around him with the fearless curiosity of youth. Instead of being intimidated by their enthusiasm or treating them with diplomatic formality, Webb sat down on the floor and began answering their questions with obvious enjoyment. "Are all humans as small as you?" asked one particularly bold child. "Actually, I'm considered quite tall for a human," Webb replied with a laugh. "My species comes in many different sizes, just like yours do. But you're right that we're generally smaller than Velthari. Do you know why that might be?" The children offered various theories, and Webb patiently discussed each one, explaining how different planetary conditions led to different evolutionary adaptations. He talked about human diversity in terms that the young Veltheri could understand, comparing human variations to the different subspecies of Veltheri that had evolved in various regions of their homeworld. When one child asked why humans fought so much, Webb's expression became more serious. But his answer remained age-appropriate. Fighting is sometimes necessary to protect things we care about, he explained. But the best humans try to solve problems with words first. That's why I'm here, to learn about your people so that humans and Veltheri can be friends instead of strangers. Zara found herself genuinely moved by Webb's interaction with the children. He treated them as individuals worthy of respect, not as diplomatic props or curiosities. When it came time to leave, several children asked if he would come back to tell them more stories about human culture. Webb promised he would, if his schedule permitted. That evening, Zara's curiosity finally overcame her adherence to protocol. She sent a message to Webb's quarters, inviting him to join her for an informal conversation before their official introduction. It was unprecedented for a Veltheri princess to break tradition in such a manner, but she needed to understand this human who was already defying all her expectations. They met in the palace's garden of contemplation, a secluded space where the bioluminescent plants created a gentle, ever-changing light show. Webb arrived precisely on time, carrying what appeared to be a small gift wrapped in human fashion. "Princess Zara Thil," he said, offering the traditional Veltheri greeting with perfect pronunciation. "I'm honored by your invitation, though I hope I have not caused any diplomatic complications by accepting." "The complications are mine to manage," Zara replied, studying his face carefully. In person, she could see details that holographic recordings had missed. His eyes were an unusual shade of green that seemed to shift in the garden's changing light, and there was a small scar on his left temple that spoke of past conflicts. "I wanted to speak with you honestly before tomorrow's ceremony commits us both to this path." Webb nodded understanding. "I appreciate your directness. I hope you will always feel free to speak openly with me." He offered her the wrap package. "I brought this as a gesture of respect, though I realize it may not be appropriate to exchange gifts before the formal ceremony." Zara accepted the package and carefully unwrapped it, revealing a beautifully crafted crystal sculpture. At first glance, it appeared to be a representation of the Veltheri constellation of the Eternal Harmony, but as she examined it more closely, she realized it was something far more complex. "It's a hybrid star map," Webb explained. "It shows the Eternal Harmony as seen from Veltherian Prime, but also includes the constellation that humans call the Guardian, as visible from Earth. I had it made by an artisan on the trade station at Alpha Centauri. She specializes in creating art that represents multiple cultural perspectives simultaneously." The gift was thoughtful in ways that surprised Zara. It demonstrated Webb's knowledge of Veltheri astronomy and culture, but also suggested a future where both perspectives could coexist harmoniously. The craftsmanship was exquisite, clearly representing significant personal expense and effort on his part. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. "I have studied your record extensively, Captain Webb, but I confess I am still uncertain what to expect from this union. Please call me Marcus. And I understand your uncertainty. I share it." Webb settled onto a crystal bench designed for Veltheri physiology, looking somewhat awkward, but making the effort to follow local customs. "I want you to know that I don't expect this marriage to be anything other than what we choose to make it. If it remains purely political, I will respect that. But I hope we might find genuine partnership." Zara appreciated his honesty. "What do you hope to gain from this alliance?" "Personally, I mean not politically." Webb considered the question carefully before answering. "Understanding, primarily. Your species has achieved something remarkable, a civilization that has endured for millennia while maintaining both technological advancement and philosophical wisdom. Humans are young, and we make many mistakes because we lack that kind of perspective. I hope to learn from you. And what could you possibly offer in return? You admit your species is young and prone to error. Fresh perspectives, perhaps. Sometimes experience can become a limitation if it prevents you from seeing new solutions to old problems. Humans excel at adaptation and innovation, often because we don't know enough to understand why something should be impossible." Webb smiled ruefully. "It's not always a good thing, but it has its advantages." They talked for over an hour, discussing everything from philosophical differences between their species to practical concerns about their upcoming marriage. Zara found herself increasingly impressed by Webb's thoughtfulness and candor. He didn't try to impress her with false bravado or empty promises, nor did he defer to her rank in the obsequious manner she had come to expect from most aliens. When she mentioned her concerns about their drastically different lifespans, Webb's response surprised her. "That difference makes every moment we have more precious, doesn't it?" he said. "Humans have learned to find meaning in brief connections because we know how fragile they are. If our marriage lasts only 50 years by your standards, but those years are filled with genuine partnership and mutual growth, wouldn't that be better than 1,000 years of mere political convenience?" As the evening ended and they prepared to return to their respective quarters, Zara realized that her perspective on the marriage had shifted fundamentally. She was no longer dreading it as a political sacrifice, nor anticipating it as a romantic adventure. Instead, she was genuinely curious about what kind of partnership they might build together. "Marcus," she said as they parted, "tomorrow's ceremony will make our engagement official. Are you prepared for what that means? The expectations, the scrutiny, the responsibility?" Webb met her gaze directly. "I've been preparing for this my entire life, Princess. Not this specific situation, but the responsibility of representing my people in matters of galactic importance. I won't pretend it isn't daunting, but I believe we can rise to meet whatever challenges arise." As Zara watched him walk away through the palace corridors, she found herself thinking that perhaps her mother had been wiser than she had initially realized. This human might indeed be exactly what the galaxy needed in the dark times ahead. The official engagement ceremony proceeded flawlessly, but it was the crisis that erupted 3 days later that truly revealed Marcus Webb's character and changed the course of galactic history. Zara was reviewing wedding preparations when the emergency klaxons began sounding throughout the palace. Within minutes, her personal communicator was buzzing with urgent messages. The first came from her mother. "Emergency session in the war room. Come immediately." The palace war room was already crowded when Zara arrived. Military commanders, government ministers, and diplomatic advisors surrounded the central holographic display, their voices rising in agitated discussion. At the center of it all stood Marcus, still wearing the casual clothes he had been wearing when the emergency began, but somehow managing to project an aura of calm competence despite being surrounded by Velthari officials who towered over him. "What is the situation?" Zara asked as she approached the group. Her mother's expression was grim. "The research station at Kelver 7 has gone silent. Their last transmission mentioned detecting something on the edge of the system before communications were cut. When we sent a reconnaissance vessel to investigate, it was destroyed as well," finished Admiral Cav then, the Velthari fleet commander. "Whatever attacked the station eliminated our ship before it could even send a detailed report. We detected massive energy signatures consistent with weapons technology far beyond anything in our current databases." Zara felt her blood chill. Kelver 7 was a deep space research facility studying ancient artifacts found in the galactic rim. If something had attacked it with unknown technology. "The Devourers," she whispered. The room fell silent at the word. For weeks, reports had been filtering in from the galaxy's edge. Entire systems going dark, mysterious energy signatures, ships disappearing without trace. The elder races had dismissed most of these as pirates or natural phenomena, but the pattern had been growing increasingly disturbing. "We don't know what we're facing," admitted Admiral Cavin. "Our standard battle protocols assume opponents with familiar technology and tactics. If this is truly an unknown enemy, then we need to think differently about how we respond," Marcus interjected quietly. All eyes turned to him, and Zara noticed that several of the Velthari officials looked annoyed that a human was speaking during their military crisis discussion. "With respect, Captain Webb," said Minister Dalthon, "this is a Velthari matter. Your species has no experience with threats of this magnitude." Marcus nodded politely. "You're absolutely right, Minister. Humans have never faced an enemy capable of eliminating entire star systems. But we have extensive experience with fighting opponents who possess superior technology and numbers." His voice remained calm and respectful, but there was an undertone of steel that made several of the Velthari lean forward attentively. "Sometimes the key to victory isn't matching your enemy's strengths, but finding weaknesses they don't know they have. Empress Velandra had been listening silently, but now she spoke. What would you recommend, Captain? Information first. Marcus replied immediately. We need to understand what we're facing before we can develop effective countermeasures. I'd like to volunteer to lead a reconnaissance mission to the Kelver system. The suggestion caused an immediate uproar among the Veltheri officials. Absolutely not. Minister Dalton protested. You're about to marry into the royal family. We cannot risk your life on a mission that has already claimed 2 ships. Besides, added Admiral Kevin, what could a single human ship accomplish that our vessels could not? Marcus turned to address the Admiral directly. Human ships are smaller and less sophisticated than yours, which normally would be a disadvantage. But in this situation, it might allow us to approach undetected. Our vessels use different energy signatures and communication protocols. Whatever destroyed your ships might not even recognize us as a threat until it's too late to stop us from gathering intelligence. Zara found herself studying Marcus with new interest. His proposal was audacious, but it made tactical sense. Human technology was indeed primitive compared to Veltheri systems, but that primitiveness might serve as camouflage against an enemy that expected to face advanced galactic civilizations. Even if your ship could approach undetected, the Admiral continued, how would you gather useful intelligence? Our sensor arrays are far more sophisticated than anything humans possess. True, but we don't need sophisticated sensors to answer the most important questions, Marcus replied. We need to know if this enemy is still in the system, what happened to the research station, and whether there are any survivors. For that, we need mobility, stealth, and the ability to transmit information quickly if things go wrong. Empress Velandra was nodding slowly. Continue. I propose a modified reconnaissance mission using a small human vessel equipped with Veltheri communication technology. The ship would jump into the system at maximum range, conduct passive scans, and jump out immediately if any threats are detected. If the system appears clear, we proceed to investigate the station ruins for clues about what happened. And if the enemy is still present, asked Admiral Cavan. Marcus's expression didn't change. Then, we gather what intelligence we can before they destroy us, and we make sure that information reaches the Alliance fleet regardless of our fate. The casual way he discussed his potential death sent a chill through the room. Zara realized that this was what her mother had been talking about, the human willingness to sacrifice everything for the mission. It should have been horrifying, but instead she found it strangely admirable. The mission is too dangerous, she said suddenly, surprising herself. If Captain Webb is determined to go, he should not go alone. I will accompany him. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Every Veltheri in the room began speaking at once, protesting the idea of risking the royal heir on such a mission. But Zara held up a clawed hand for silence. I have more experience with deep space operations than any other member of the royal family, she stated firmly. If we are truly facing an unknown enemy, then we need our best people gathering intelligence. Besides, she added, glancing at Marcus, this mission will require someone who understands both human and Veltheri technology. Marcus looked surprised, but pleased by her offer. Princess, I would be honored to have you as my partner on this mission. Your expertise would be invaluable. This is madness. Minister Dalthon protested. We cannot risk both of you on a single mission. Empress Velandra raised her hand for silence, and the room immediately quieted. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of centuries. The princess has the right to volunteer for missions of galactic importance, and Captain Webb's proposal has merit. She paused, studying both of them carefully. However, I will not authorize this mission unless you can demonstrate that your combined skills provide a genuine advantage over conventional reconnaissance. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances. Then, Marcus stepped forward. Your Majesty, Princess Zarathil has published extensively on xenoarchaeology and ancient technologies. If the research station was studying artifacts related to this enemy, her expertise could be crucial for understanding what they were investigating. Combined with my tactical experience and knowledge of human stealth techniques, we would have the best possible chance of both surviving the mission and returning with actionable intelligence. The Empress considered this for a long moment. Then, she nodded slowly. Very well. You have 48 hours to prepare. Admiral Cav then will provide you with our most advanced communication equipment and defensive systems that can be adapted to a human vessel. Minister Dalthon will coordinate intelligence briefings on everything we know about the Kelver system and the research conducted there. As the officials began organizing mission preparations, Zara found herself alone with Marcus for a moment. "Are you certain about this?" she asked quietly. "This mission could very well be a death sentence for both of us." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Princess, I've been preparing my entire life for a moment when my skills and knowledge could make a difference for galactic civilization. If this enemy is truly as dangerous as the reports suggest, then gathering intelligence about them is the most important mission any of us will ever undertake." He paused, then added more softly, "Besides, I can't think of anyone I'd rather have watching my back." Zara felt something shift in her chest, a warmth she hadn't expected. For the first time, she began to understand what it might mean to be truly partners with this remarkable human. "Nor can I," she admitted. "Let's go save the galaxy, Marcus Webb." As they left the war room together to begin mission preparations, neither of them noticed the small smile on Empress Valandra's face. Perhaps this marriage alliance would prove more beneficial than even she had dared to hope. The modified human scout ship Harmony's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kelver system 47 hours later. Inside the cramped bridge, Princess Zara Thill and Captain Marcus Webb worked in perfect synchronization, their initial awkwardness forgotten in the face of professional necessity. "Passive sensors are online," Zara reported, her claws dancing over the hybrid control interfaces they had spent 2 days installing. "No immediate energy signatures detected, but there's significant debris in the inner system." Marcus studied the tactical display, his human eyes picking out patterns that the sensors couldn't yet resolve. "That debris field is too large to be just a research station. Whatever happened here, it was thorough." They had approached the system using a technique Marcus called drift reconnaissance, entering at minimal power with all active systems offline, relying on momentum to carry them toward their target while they remained virtually undetectable. It was a method born of human paranoia about superior enemies, and one that no other species had ever needed to develop. As they drifted closer to the inner system, the scope of the destruction became apparent. The Kelver 7 research station had been completely obliterated, reduced to fragments no larger than a shuttle. But more disturbing were the other debris fields scattered throughout the system, remnants of ships that had clearly been destroyed while trying to flee. "I count at least 15 vessels," Zara said quietly. "Commercial transports, survey ships, even what looks like a Zephyrian cruiser." This wasn't just an attack on the research station. Something hunted down everything in the system. Marcus was analyzing the debris patterns when his sensor array detected something that made him freeze. "Princess, look at this energy signature reading." Zara leaned over to examine his display, and her breath caught. The residual energy patterns were unlike anything in any galactic database, but there was something familiar about their harmonic structure. "The ancient artifacts," she whispered. The research station was studying technology from the Void Builders, the precursor race that vanished 1,000,000 years ago. These energy signatures match the theoretical models we developed based on their relics. So whatever attacked this system might be connected to the Void Builders themselves. Marcus asked. Before Zara could answer, their proximity alarms began chirping softly. Something was approaching from the system's outer edge, something massive that was moving far faster than any known vessel. "Emergency protocols," Marcus said calmly, his hands already moving to the jump controls. "We gather what data we can and prepare to transmit everything back to Veltharian Prime." But as they watched the approaching contact, Zara noticed something strange. "Marcus, look at its approach vector. It's not intercepting us. It's heading directly for the research station's remains." The massive object decelerated as it entered the inner system, revealing itself to be a ship unlike anything either of them had ever seen. It was easily 10 times the size of the largest Velthari dreadnought, its hull appearing to be constructed from some kind of living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining structural integrity. "Are you recording this?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with concentration. "Everything," Zara confirmed. "But, Marcus, if that ship detects us..." "It won't," Marcus replied with surprising confidence. "Look at its behavior. It's not scanning for threats, it's scavenging. They watched in fascination as the alien vessel deployed what appeared to be collection devices, gathering up fragments of the destroyed research station with mechanical precision. The ship's actions seemed methodical, almost routine, as if this was a process it had performed many times before. It's collecting the Void Builder artifacts, Zara realized. That's what this is about. Someone, or something, is systematically destroying any civilization that comes into contact with Void Builder technology. As they observed the alien ship's operations, more details became apparent. The vessel's hull showed signs of extreme age, and its movements had the fluid efficiency of technology that had been perfected over millennia. This wasn't some new threat that had emerged from the galactic rim. This was something ancient that had been awakened. "We need to get closer," Marcus said suddenly. "That's insane," Zara protested. "If that ship detects us, it won't, because it's not looking for us. Think about it. If this thing has been hunting civilizations that discover Void Builder technology, it's probably designed to detect advanced sensor arrays and weapons systems. Our ship is primitive enough to slip under its detection threshold." Marcus was already adjusting their course, using minimal thruster burns to alter their trajectory. "Besides, we need to understand what we're dealing with. From this distance, all we have is speculation." As they drifted closer to the alien vessel, more details became visible. The ship's surface was covered with what appeared to be ancient symbols that pulsed with faint energy. Some of them were recognizable as Void Builder script, while others belonged to species that had vanished from galactic history eons ago. "It's a monument," Zara breathed. "Those symbols, they're memorial inscriptions. This ship is recording every civilization it destroys." The implications hit them both simultaneously. This wasn't a random alien attack or even a territorial expansion. It was a systematic cleansing operation that had been going on for millions of years, eliminating any species that grew advanced enough to study Void Builder technology. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Marcus said grimly. "The Void Builders didn't disappear. They created this Guardian to prevent anyone else from reaching their level of technological development. We're not facing an invasion. We're facing a cosmic reset button that activates whenever civilization gets too advanced." As if responding to their understanding, the alien ship suddenly stopped its collection activities and began turning toward their position. "It knows we're here," Zara said, her voice steady despite the terror of the moment. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, charging the hyperspace drive, while simultaneously activating their communication array. "Princess, I need you to transmit everything we've recorded to Veltharion Prime. Include our analysis. The Alliance needs to understand what they're really fighting." "What about us?" "We're going to do what humans do best," Marcus replied with a grim smile. "We're going to improvise." As the alien ship accelerated toward them with impossible speed, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other species. Instead of jumping away immediately, he fired the Harmony's Edge S engines at full power, driving them directly toward the research station's debris field. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "If that ship is programmed to preserve Void Builder artifacts, then getting close to the debris might confuse its targeting protocols. It won't risk destroying relics to eliminate us." The gamble paid off. As they reached the debris field, the alien ship's pursuit slowed noticeably. Its weapons remained powered and used, apparently unwilling to risk damaging the very artifacts it had come to collect. "Now we jump," Marcus said, activating the hyperspace drive. The transition to hyperspace was violent, their hastily modified systems straining under the energy requirements. But as the stars elongated around them, both Marcus and Zara knew they had accomplished something unprecedented. They had encountered the galaxy's most ancient enemy and lived to tell about it. 6 hours later, they arrived at Veltharion Prime to find the entire Alliance fleet assembling in defensive formation. Their transmission had sparked the largest military mobilization in galactic history, with every major species contributing ships and personnel to face the approaching threat. But as Marcus and Zara stood before the assembled Alliance Council, sharing their intelligence and analysis, they both understood that military force alone would not be enough. The enemy they faced had been perfecting its art of destruction for millions of years, and it possessed technology that made even the most advanced Alliance vessels seem primitive. The question, Marcus concluded his briefing, is not how we defeat this enemy in battle. The question is how we change the rules of the game entirely. Princess Zarathil looked at her intended husband with newfound respect and understanding. In the space of a few days, she had gone from dreading their marriage to recognizing Marcus Webb as a true partner. Someone whose unconventional thinking and willingness to take calculated risks might be exactly what the galaxy needed. "What do you propose?" asked Empress Valandra. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances, and in that moment, their partnership became something more than political convenience. They had found in each other not just respect, but the kind of deep trust that only comes from facing impossible odds together. "We're going to do something the Void Builder Guardian never anticipated," Zara said, taking Marcus's hand in her clawed one. "We're going to unite every species in the galaxy, not just the Alliance members, but everyone, even our former enemies." And then Marcus added, "We're going to teach that ancient ship something it's never learned in a million years of systematic destruction." "Which is?" prompted the Empress. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, there was genuine hope in his expression. That sometimes the best way to preserve the past is to embrace the future. As the Alliance Council began planning humanity's greatest gamble, Princess Zarathil realized that her mother had been right all along. This marriage wasn't just about political necessity, it was about bringing together the ancient wisdom of established civilizations and the innovative audacity of newcomers like humanity. The galaxy would need both to survive what was coming, and perhaps in the process of saving civilization itself, she and Marcus might discover that their arranged marriage could become something neither of them had dared to hope for, a true partnership based on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the kind of love that grows from facing the impossible together. The wedding, they decided, could wait until after they had saved the universe.